Hello, and welcome to Against the Odds. I'm Jan Powell, and in this podcast, I'm asking some extraordinary people what made them winners when the odds were stacked against them, and how did they overcome those life-changing obstacles, and what have they learned along the way. All our guests have been affected directly or indirectly by HIV/AIDS, and we'll be finding out about the challenges they've faced and what inspires them to strive for what they believe in.
A lot of the human problems can only be solved by humans. Everything can't be solved by the government or by science or by technology. There are some things that we have to do.
That was our guest today, Swati Bhattacharya, talking about her belief in the power of the individual to bring about change. Swati was the first woman in India to become the chief creative officer of a major advertising and PR company. And since she joined FCB India, the company has won scores of international awards for her work. Swati is passionate about what she does and has a reputation for straight talking. She totally rejects old stereotypes in advertising and has made a name for herself, leading groundbreaking campaigns for diversity and equality. I spoke to Swati at her home in Delhi. Hi Swati, good to see you.
Hi, so good to see you.
So what's your week been like?
Oh, it's been crazy, This is the time when all the advertising award shows are happening all over the world. And this year I was judging like 3 of them. So the last 2 months have been pretty crazy.
So have you been spending your time just watching hours and hours and hours of ads, basically?
Yes, absolutely. So it's like just watching ads and no shows. So it's, the ad break is like the main thing.
A huge responsibility. I've done that once. I had to judge some humanitarian films. And I did feel a huge responsibility. I had to really focus. And you're in this dark viewing cinema for like 5 days on the trot, just watching films. It is hard to keep concentrating. So have you got some winners?
Yes. And it's good.
You can't tell us.
No, I can't. But there are some pieces of work that are so beautiful. It's like you want to share it, just like books that you read,
It's amazing, isn't it, how ads can tell such a story. I mean, it's such a focused, concentrated, tiny amount of time, but it can have such impact.
One can learn distillation, compression. There's so many things that advertising can teach a creative person. I feel it's like it's like a skill set. Every creative person should dabble in it once.
Let's go back to the beginning before you got to this point where you're judging the work of internationals all over the world. You were an only child. You grew up in the town of Darjeeling in the Himalayas. It must have been quite a comfortable life.
I was born in Cooch Behar, which is very close to Darjeeling, but I grew up in Delhi. In fact, I haven't had too much movement in my life. Like a friend of mine tells me I'm a binary miracle because my entire life I've lived in 2 zip codes, in Delhi.
So what kind of a child were you at school? Were you the naughty girl or were you the teacher's pet?
I was the teacher's pet, even though it's not that my grades helped me with that. I was pretty average. And I used to really struggle with math and science. And those were little wobbly years where for a bit I thought I'm not academically inclined at all. But the moment I went into high school when I could choose my subjects, high school and college doing literature, then my self-esteem was back. And I wasn't too wild. I was quiet and shy, but I was funny, I think. And that's why I could enact, I could do a little bit of mimicry, and all that made me a little popular.
Aha. So you were always a dramatist. You were always there creating stories, I guess.
Trying to get myself heard, yes.
You've said that your mum was a huge influence on you. Did she spark that desire to stand out, which has obviously been a big part of your career since? What kind of a person was she?
So my mom is like, she's like stunningly beautiful, For her, standing out wasn't a very tough thing. But she is also so giving, Here is this young girl who comes from, she was a refugee when she came to India and got married as early as 18 and had me at 19. And she didn't know a soul in Delhi. She didn't know, the language of Delhi, which is Hindi. Her English was also not any good. But just by, I think, her ability to create and serve a community wherever she is made her hugely popular.
So did she spark your interest in communications? Because that's obviously the way your career moved.
Yeah. Because after I got born, she studied public relations. She got a job as a PR person with a big government company. And I used to spend all my vacations. There was nothing like a creche. So sometimes she would take me to work very often. I knew what that whole, it was very familiar to me. And my father was in the bureau that controls press advertising in India, called Indian Newspaper Society. So between the two of them, I think an osmosis, it was like in my blood.
So it's a kind of dynasty you've got going there, Swati.
No, I think it was just like, it was so, they were both so hardworking, and they both, work was just in the service of bringing up this only child. I've got so much more than they had, and I just wish my father hadn't passed away so early, and then I could have shared some of this with them,
Swati, you've broken down some massive barriers in India, really completely against the odds. You became the first female creative director for one of India's leading advertising and communications companies, FCB India. And since you've been doing that job, they've won scores of international awards. You've produced groundbreaking work. So what's the secret? What was it that drove you into that?
It has so many answers, and it also has so many questions, And for me, I think very early in life, I realized that for me, intimacy is the true algorithm of creativity. And whatever project I work on, I actually put my heart into it, Because for me, I haven't looked at my audience as product users. They are human beings, and to connect with them, to use a toolbox, to open any closed artery, or I like to do that, because a lot of the human problems can only be solved by humans. Everything can't be solved by the government or by science or by technology. There are some things that we have to do.
You once said that as a woman, to be in a room full of men in grey suits and make your voice heard was an act that required courage, leadership, and even defiance sometimes. Do you remember that feeling? What was it like?
Yeah, it happens to me even now. Even in terms of the male creative directors, when they enter a room, there's a sense of buzz they have. And whatever I do, even if I lug all my awards and, put it behind my back, I won't be able to generate that buzz. There is, they do these big leadership things. They can just like say, okay, let's all go to the bar. I'm buying you all a drink. And I'm like, at 5:30, I want to pick up my bag. I want to come back home. So yes, in terms of defiance, absolutely, because that whole bunch of men in suits decide, they start to, like, their version of what motherhood should be, their version of looking at a woman as a product user. Those are the bits in which my defiance or my fangs or my, they always say the piranha is back. I can get very vicious with those bits.
I guess that will change as more women move into the industry, as you are no longer in the minority. You also said it becomes easier if women stick together. Is that true? Do you think
Absolutely.
As women can work together, then this obvious divide will be eroded?
Absolutely, because, the sad bit is that patriarchy, like a virus, has entered not just men's bodies, but also women's hearts and minds, And I think that the power of sisterhood hasn't really been told to us, that what a big, amazing thing it is, that it is truly the wealth of your life. There is a big narrative about every girl finding her mate, finding, like how Plato wanted you to find your half circle. But the thing is, your half circle can also be your girlfriend. And that cluster, I feel like truly, they are your unpaid shrinks, they are the propellers, they are your secret army, they are your secret sauce. And that can happen anywhere, at work, at home, in hospital corridors. I'm so hungry for it that wherever I find it, I always want to keep it.
So basically, women need to do it more. This power is to be found by, working together, being together, standing up to that bunch of grey suits,
and not falling into that picture, Like if you look at it, this whole in India, there is so much written about motherhood, how perfect they are, how saintly they are. And then when you really go unpack that, you see that it's a bunch of men who have created this. And the mythification of this is so strong that every woman lives with a mountain of guilt of either feeling too much or feeling too little, You are guilty if you're a tiger mom, and you are absolutely guilty if you are, not a tiger mom.
And I guess this is something you have to be super aware of in your role in advertising, because you have to be able to prove that the kind of advertising you're producing is effective, but at the same time, personally, it must be really important not to simply underline and reinforce those myths.
Yeah, absolutely, because that has entered the business so deeply, I mean, when I joined advertising, they wouldn't even want you to put a mother wear a sleeveless blouse, because a woman who shows her arms might fuck around with with the amount of protein or carbohydrate your child needs. Or if she has short hair, maybe she doesn't care about whether the uniform is clean. And so what if your child goes to school one day with a dirty uniform? It can't be that one fact which is going to, give you a report card of a bad mother for life. So advertising and patriarchy have gone hand in hand, creating these, bars for women. And that's why it's important for women in advertising to now, break those and create a place where you get to see women who are just like you on TV.
You've really made a name for yourself, creating campaigns that drive social issues, that aim to change deeply rooted cultural attitudes like assumptions about motherhood or the role of women or whatever it is. What was it that started that? What was it that drew you to that focus, to making campaigns that highlight social justice rather than simply promoting products?
It all started with my wanting to, if you understand, a lot of, like 80% of my target audience has been women. But I, in the beginning of the career, was talking to the women just like I had been trained to do, just the kind of women that I was trained to create in TV ads. But I think something happened to me when I became a mother and I started understanding that what I'm doing is so wrong. And I think that is the time I took it upon myself to create women who are real, who are sloppy like me, or who can be amazing sometimes and can be slummy sometimes. And, and that bit, that motherhood isn't easy and understanding motherhood isn't easy, became like my own mantra. And when I started to connect with women like that, all the other issues started to tumble out,
But you've really made a name for yourself with these campaigns, not just about motherhood, but you've been drawn particularly to spotlighting the difficulties that transgender people face. Can you tell me something about the inequalities and injustice they face in India?
Oh my God, this also, this is actually connected with my story. So I'm a Bengali, and for us, our big festival is the festival of Durga Puja, Durga being the name of the goddess. And it is like a Mardi Gras meets a New Year's Eve. It's like people on the streets, it's dancing, it's eating, and the piece de resistance of this festival, which happens on the last day, is this thing called Shindur Kala, which is like the vermilion game. And when I got divorced, I guess then it hit me, because none of my cousins or my friends would call me to come and play the vermilion game, because the vermilion game is only for married women, because everybody else is seen as not so auspicious. And then I wanted to do something about it. And then I was looking at, so who all are with me in this uninvited camp? And there they were, the trans, the single women, the divorcees, the sex workers, the widows. And when I was doing that campaign, I truly got to know the trans community, In India, their stories are like really, really hard to take. And that's why your interaction is also, because most of them, like about 70 to 75%, or sometimes even 90%, leave home or are thrown from home by parents. And then they start living on the streets, begging, get into, sex trade, start doing drugs, HIV. It's like a really sad trajectory. So it's not that I've bumped into a trans person at work. I bumped into a trans person in a conference because of the lack of education, opportunities. They are practically in the margins of the community.
Yeah. So they're unaccepted by the family, they're thrown out, and then they're exposed and vulnerable to exploitation or to infectious disease, HIV/AIDS particularly. So it was through this festival for married women that you became aware of them. That's fascinating.
Absolutely. And then, just after that, I did another campaign with Times of India called Out and Proud, because in India, newspaper, the classifieds is the oldest part of the newspapers. And a lot of the country has gotten married because of classified columns. The classifieds are they are almost like the bloodline of the society. And then the whole campaign was about little classified columns coming from the trans community, asking hey, I want a beauty parlor where they will let me wax my back because I don't have access to a beauty parlor. Or there was a column by a daughter saying, Mom, I have seen you struggle in this marriage. I really want you and Auntie Rita to have a life now, So all that coming out, you then, it forced the Indian society to open Times of India, which is the biggest newspaper in the world, I think, and read these stories,
So how difficult was it to persuade Times of India to take this social issue, this issue about inequality and, yes, lack of access for women who were not married? How difficult was it to persuade them to use that as a means of promoting their newspaper, I guess?
Yeah, but you never go to a brand and say, oh, can you please do this for me? So you have to really cleverly couch it, because what the task was, can you get young people to read? And then you had to tell them what are the things that the young people believe in. They believe in inclusivity. They believe in diversity. What are you doing as the newspaper? And then you say, oh, listen, let me take the oldest part of your newspaper and let me inject some young ideas in it. You sell it like that.
One of your particularly successful campaigns has been one that spotlights the difficulties that face transgender children. You produced this rather beautiful film, The Mirror. Can you tell me a bit about that? How did you get inspired to make that film, and how difficult was it to do it?
No, by then I was pretty close to the community, all the trans women who worked with me on the Shindur Kala campaign. They're all like my sisters. If they're in Delhi, they come home for a meal. They're first name basis with my mom. And so what happened was, when you chat with them, all the pain that really sits in their heart actually comes from the childhood. Even though in their adult lives they might have been abused, they might have been raped, but the pain that really sits and like some coagulated thing is when that rejection of parents or to be thrown away from home. And that made me think that, when we look at LGBTQI, we think that problems happen to adults. We don't know that all the trauma of that actually happens from the time the child is 2 or 3. And imagine the pressure on a little baby who doesn't even know its ABCs, has to now learn how to hide feelings, choices, desires. And I wanted to bring that out. And also I felt that the problems of the community, the problems can't just be solved by getting a diversity officer in your organization. These problems can be solved in every home by just a mom and dad and teachers So I wanted to create a piece of work which I could take school to school, home to home, and just get people to open their heartstrings.
And what you see in this film is a child with a mother and a grandmother, and the child doesn't want to join in the games that the rest of the family are playing, and they go away from the group and they wrap themselves in a scarf and they look in the mirror and they start to dance, and the grandmother and the mother come down and see the child, and at first there is shock seeing this presumably little boy who is behaving stereotypically as a little girl. But then there is this acceptance, there's this growing acceptance of what they see. And there's a beautiful and very happy, ending to the film. And there are no words, it's just all done by the movement and by the mood that you create. What was the reaction to that film when you started to show it to people? How did they respond to it?
They responded really well, because it wasn't giving them a lesson. It was in a very, when the child is dancing and the mom walks in and all music stops and the child is flinching and looking downward, everybody in their heads thought, now he's going to be beaten up. Now the mom's going to, shake him up. So we realized that the violence is so normalized that that's what everybody thought. The fact that the mother joins the child in dancing is where you think, oh my God, what is so simple? Our brain never went there. We all just went to trauma. And I think the line at the end that the line is, let's see our children the way they see themselves, is a very universal line. It is like, an introvert child, an extrovert child, a trance child, a quiet child, an effeminate child, a masculine child. Let us just see them for how they see themselves. That's all.
This has sparked your latest campaign, the Unbox Me campaign. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because that has also just been launched.
Yes, it's pretty universal thing that children like to keep all their favorite things. In India, it could be a box. Somewhere else, they could probably keep all their, stuff that they like, a stamp or button or a particular stuffed toy. It's kept, in some part of their cupboard. But what happens with trans children is that some of these things, because they cause so much distress or so much, anger and violence at home, they try and hide these things, little things that give them joy. It could be a lipstick. It could be, little earrings, bangles. So a boy who likes to wear bangles, or a boy who likes to identify himself as a girl, learns to hide these little things. And there's so much of shame and guilt. And I thought, for the Trans Visibility Day, let me recreate these boxes and get famous people to unbox it.
Aha, yes, yes.
And those unboxing stories is what I will again take to schools and to teachers.
Is it being accepted? Do you think it will be accepted in schools, bringing quite controversial ideas into the schoolroom? Is that accepted?
Absolutely. Already, some of the top school principals have done the unboxing for me. And the Indian Transgender Health Organization is now using unboxing as a tool to make, as a sensitization idea.
Swati, you've won many awards for your work, and you've now been at the top of your game for quite a few years. What is it that keeps you going? Isn't it lonely at the top?
No, I mean, it's not, I have a healthy distrust of anything numerical, whether it's the weight on the weighing machine or number of awards or your salary in figures. I'm led more by feeling. So I feel every piece of work that I do, it's like a little detox mechanism. And then, the fact when people call me and ask me to partner them in whatever work they are doing, like right now I did a campaign with Tara Krishnaswamy, who is leading India's only collective which is working for female representation in the parliament. So I meet such interesting people, and then I get to be their workmate for a few months, and then, I actually enjoy it.
You have two daughters, and you said actually that motherhood is one of the biggest challenges you faced. So how are you coping with your teenagers now? Are they as rebellious as they're supposed to be?
Well, they are not my daughters right now. They've both morphed into two sister-in-laws. So I feel I live with two sister-in-laws, and yes, that has been.
Why do you say that? What does that mean? What are the connections there?
With sister-in-laws, you might have one or two great moments of intimacy or a really nice evening in the restaurant, but you don't think that every day is milk and honey with them, right? So for me, there are some moments when we are like all having so much fun and want to sit in the living room and just keep chatting or be on the bed. Otherwise, I feel they have their own world, and they have they are so nocturnal. They wake up in the afternoon, they're up all night. It's like there's, there are lots of, they're just like another kind of animal.
Yeah. Are they both, are either of them showing signs of moving into communications like you, following their mother's footsteps? So or rather the family dynasty, isn't it?
So the younger one is in school, and right now I don't know where her real interest lies outside social media. But the older one is incredible because, she finished college from home because of COVID, and then she was stuck in this apartment, and in her bedroom there's a mirror. And suddenly she started taking photographs of her, and like an influencer. And in a year and a half, she's got 135,000 followers. And she owns more clothes than I have had in my entire lifetime. I'm 53, she's 22, and these boxes keep arriving. And that I found that absolutely incredible without ever leaving home. And brands from all over the world just keep sending her stuff.
So it's a completely different way of promoting a brand, isn't it? I mean, that's interesting. So you've got it both going on under the same roof.
Absolutely.
How do you think about that? Would you like to be using this kind of methods?
Yeah, but what I'm absolutely fascinated with is here I am, the super senior person in age and in experience, who still has to plead with brands of, can we do this? Can we do that? And here is a 22-year-old who actually, like, the brands are like, all I want is to be seen with you. I'm not going to ask you for anything more. So she is very clear. I will only do this. I will, and she doesn't even show her face on the feed. She just holds the phone. And I just find that brands are so ready to toe the line.
So what's the secret? Surely this is something that you should be able to harness. There must be a way of getting that brand compliance, if you like.
Absolutely. And I think that is to do with how consistent, how clear you are as an influencer of how the community that you have created around your sensibility and the brand wants a place in that.
Looking back, Swati, is there one moment you can pinpoint in your life when you really felt that the odds were stacked against you, that it was going to be very difficult to achieve what you wanted to achieve? Can you think of any one particular moment that stands out? And also, what's the lesson that you learned from it?
So, when I got divorced, I was 40. My younger one was about not even 5, and my older one was not even 10. And this whole narrative of there'll be someone for you, and the children were so young, and I didn't know how I would get out of the marriage, pay all the bills, bring up these two, and find a partner. And that whole thing of, and I think, and that's why this, as if the only way to undo the stigma of a divorce or broken home was to quickly find someone else to fix it with. But thanks to my career being so delicious and syrupy, that as I started to get these projects, which had a bigger ambition than just making you, that just became like this big love. And now in my 50s, I am so grateful that I have found a happiness with my work, with my girlfriends, with mom, I realized that it's not that, yes, some people do find, an incredible relationship, but the other bit of it is you are not a have-not if you don't have a relationship. These are all different haves. Your girlfriends, your love for books, your love for music, love for travel, and all these haves cumulatively make you a have.
It's been great talking to you today, Swati. Thanks so much, and good luck with the campaign.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely speaking to you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Against the Odds. You can find more information and links in the podcast notes on unaids.org/podcasts. Do please share and subscribe to this podcast, as it really helps us reach our growing audience. The podcast is presented by me, Jan Powell. The senior producer for UNAIDS is Charlotte Sector. Original music by Ken Nikravesh and Hugo Powell. Against the Odds is made by Powell Media for UNAIDS.